I couldn't understand what I was learning at school. You know, crossing the T's, dotting the I's, all that sort of stuff didn't make any sense to me. And while I was in the cadets at the age of 11, I was being taught first aid, how to navigate, and that made sense to me. I could see how that was going to be used in my life. So I kind of, and wrongly now I know that, I disbanded school. And at the age of 13, I got expelled from school for gluing the maths teacher to the chair, thinking it was clever. And he captured me, put me in detention, and was determined I was going to do detention, and was 2 floors up. And he was in the room with me, keeping me there. And as soon as he went to the door to do something, I opened the window and jumped out into the bushes and ran off. And I don't think I went back to school again, over there to probably on a Friday to get picked for the football team for Saturday. You know, knowing that it was not right. And then at the age of 15, you know, I ended up in a fight, and I got stabbed. Yeah, and it was at the time of the skinheads, the rockers, the punks, all this sort of mixed craziness going on, and violence was getting worse, knives, drugs was getting involved. When I say drugs, it was mainly glue sniffing, which I'm happy to say I never got into, but a lot of friends did. Gangs were meeting up and slashing each other with cutthroats, and it was getting violent. And then I ended up in a fight. I got stabbed literally about 100 metres from my house. And I remember crawling back to the house. And as I was crawling, I was sort of going in and out, and it went from pain to sort of, as if I was drunk. I was like floating and realising it's because the blood was leaving my body, and I was about to collapse, you know. And I remember crawling through the door, blood everywhere, and seeing my mum cleaning. She saw me and screamed. And the next thing I remember, she put this woolly jumper directly on the wound, and that woke me up again. I was like, ah! You know. But I remember that moment of crawling and thinking, I'm going to die. I've got to get out of it. I have to change my lifestyle. I've got to go. Jump back a little bit. While I joined the cadets, I kind of gravitated then towards loving the military. As I said, my schooling went to the side, and I thought, this is where I need to go. I'm going to go in the military as long as I can keep a clear record. But bear in mind, I had a now criminal record, which went on wouldn't leave till I was 15. Although I got in a lot more trouble, I never really got caught. I never got another court case, even after I got stabbed. So I knew that's where I wanted to go. I wasn't sure exactly where in the military I wanted to go, but I knew the military was going to be my saving grace. And it turned out to be that a bit later on in life. Also at the age of 15, once I recovered from this, I got a job. I was working in a factory. Illegal, working the night shift, and I was earning £80 cash a week, which I was giving to my mum, obviously, for the family. And I had an accident. I slipped and fell into a vat of caustic soda, burnt all the skin off my feet, ended up getting rushed to hospital in the middle of the night. And I remember going to the hospital and being told I had to say that I broke into the factory, because if I didn't, everybody else in that factory would have lost their job. They'd have closed the factory down because it was illegal. So that's what I did. The police turned up, but there was no criminal investigation or anything else. It was just me, a little scumbag who had a record anyway, broke into a factory. And it went no further, thank God. And it took a while for me to recover. And in between this period, I applied to join the military as a young soldier. And 2 things. One, I couldn't go in because of the injuries. So I couldn't join at 16 until these injuries were cleared up. Secondly, they found out I had a broken femur from when I was a kid. I didn't declare that, so that had to be checked. And the other reason was I was just over 8 stone because of boxing at this weight for years, and they said I had to be 10 stone. So I stopped training. I was eating, drinking as best I could, going back and forth to the military careers office, waiting to get in. And I eventually joined just after 17, and when I joined the parachute regiment, and that's when my whole life changed. Then, you know, I realised I'd done the right thing. I knew this is where I needed to be, and I was now looking at real men, not little troublemakers from where I was that I thought was a big fish, and I wasn't. These were real men, been to war just after the Falklands, respected, and I remember looking and thinking, that's who I want to be. I want to be remembered and respected for something good like these people. And that was my, I've got to do this moment.
Yeah, that's one thing I wanted to ask you about, is that initial moment, because you've described it a few times. I've seen in previous interviews about when you got there, it was like these real men. Like, so what was that moment like? How did that change your sort of outlook and mindset?
You know, as a young kid, I think I was, I don't want to call it fearless, I'd actually call it stupid. Nothing bothered me. You know, getting into a fight didn't bother me, nothing. I wasn't scared of anything or anybody. I'd fight people twice my age, 3 times my age, not a problem. But then I realised now I'm stepping into a real man's world. This is an old nonsense bullshit. world. And that happened immediately. And I remember standing on the square with 70 other recruits, and I was one of the youngest and definitely the skinniest, or one of the skinniest. There's two of us that are quite skinny. And I remember looking down the line, and it was blokes with big chests, hairy chests, tattoos, moustache, and I was like, wow. And I was a skinny little kid thinking, I'm out my depth. There's no way I'm going to be able to compete with these people. And that was in my mindset. And I was already starting to, mentally lose it and thinking, I ain't going to do it. Then I just thought, I'm here. I'm not going back to that lifestyle. I've got to make this work. And as the weeks went by, the numbers got fewer, and I was still there. And every day I looked down the line and more people went, these big guys were going, it gave me strength and it gave me belief. I thought, I can't do this. I'm going to do this. And I started to not get cocky, I got confident and believed in myself. And every day was difficult, every day was different and hard, but I just thought, I can do this. And it went on and went on and went on, and the numbers got fewer and fewer and fewer, and I was still there. And it was hard, and every day I felt like throwing my hand in, but the thing that stopped me doing it was going back to the lifestyle and the way I was. I couldn't do it. There was only one way I was going to go back to that, is if they said to me, you have failed, you're out. Until they tell me that, I'm going to keep going. And it was hard work. And at the end of it, there was 7 of us originals left, and I was the champion recruit. I was actually the best recruit for that troop. They were all great guys, don't get me wrong, but I just shone a little bit more than, and I think, to be fair, I had an advantage having been in cadets. I knew some of the basic skills, so that helped me along the way. But on the physical side of it, it was hard. It was really hard. I was up against big, hard people.
What is that, to describe the training? What's it like? The test at the start. How's that going through that?
It was difficult, running with boots, running with weights, being in the gym for 40, 50 minutes of non-stop, pushing myself. I'd boxed a lot, so I was used to, cardio work, but this was relentless. It was non-stop. There was no breaks, no breaks. You've been screamed at, shouted at, and you're being pushed really through your limits. And obviously the reasons for it are needed. It has to be done, and that's what they did. And yeah, I struggled with it. It was really tough. And then the sort of endurance stuff was something I wasn't really used to. Where in civilianisation do you run around the mountains with a house on your back? You don't. And it was building me up for the right reasons to, get ready for potentially joining the battalion and going to war should it happen. And that was what it was all about. So that was difficult, getting used to that. But, I embraced it. I kind of enjoyed it. Every time I did it, I felt like I'd achieved something. And, I've been so used in my school career eating one word: fail. Every exam, fail, fail. When I did P Company as a young 17-year-old kid, it was the first time I'd really had the word Billingham, pass. And it was like, wow, I've just won the lottery. And I'm looking around the room of 40 of us that have attempted these tests, and I was one of 11 that got passed. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. And I really started believing in myself then. I thought, right, I can do this. And going through it was hard, and every day, every run, although I was fit, I was saying to myself, the little angel was saying, throw the towel in and give up. The devil was going, run through the trees, just keep going, and the devil drove me forward on this one, got me through to where I needed to be.
As many of you know, we are independent creators and filmmakers, but there is a massive attack on us right now. Traditional media over the last few years has started to slowly die. They are no longer the independent voice that you first thought they were. That's why we've created Mulligan Brothers Patreon. We've built something special for our most dedicated supporters, and I want to break it down for you real quick. The supporter tier gets you ad-free early access to both video and audio versions of Mulligan Brothers interviews 24 hours before it goes public. The executive tier gets you everything that a supporter tier gets, plus more. Exclusive interviews and behind the scenes content, walk and talks, daily routines, unreleased interviews, the stuff that you don't see anywhere else. And finally, the executive producer tier. Everything from the supporter tier and the executive tier, plus exclusive perks. Access to our treatment packages. Be the first to see which guests are coming up and get insight into the topics we'll be discussing before anyone else. And you'll even get an executive producer credit on every single documentary that we make. So if you've ever wanted to support the Mulligan Brothers mission of inspiring change so we can go around the world and get these stories that nobody else will, this is exactly how you do it. Go to patreon.com/Mulligan Brothers or click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. Join the community and help us inspire change.